Welcome back to LBG Reviews. Normally I would let the like and subscribe reminder to play out on its own, but today's video is going to be quite the doozy. As a result, let's dive right in. Be sure to still like and subscribe if you enjoy, and I hate to pull a YouTube cliche on you all, but 77% of you are not subscribed. What the heck, man? If you're coming back to my content, like if this is the second or third video you've seen, just hit that subscribe button already. I mean, creating a YouTube account is free if you don't have one set up, and that support would also really go a long way to support my channel. This week we are reviewing Potion Permit. Potion Permit is a relaxing, crafting, RPG social game created by Mass Hive Media, released back in September 2022 for PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. So essentially, if you have a console of any kind, or even a PC, you could play Potion Permit if this video spikes your fancy. In Potion Permit, you are referred to as a chemist. However, considering the emphasis on potions, I would say that a more apt job title would be alchemist, but in-game you're referred to just as the chemist. Regardless of the semantics of what your job title is, you are ordered by the Medical Association to become the resident chemist on Moonberry Island, an isolated island community that has not seen a chemist in a long time due to a tragic incident that happened long ago that caused the townsfolk to put a ban on chemists. This disaster caused a majority of the island's plant life to die off. You are brought to the island by the community's mayor, Mayor Meyer, who for the rest of the video I will be referring to as just Meyer, because Mayor Meyer is quite a tongue twister, especially if you're trying to talk fast. Meyer brought you to the island to assist in helping with curing his daughter of a bizarre illness that even the skills of their local witch doctor named Mateo. Your arrival in town, however, is received less than stellarly, to put it lightly. One thing that I think it's important to note before we dive in is, well, yes, I recorded the intro sequence. Potion Permit is not a game that you can easily rush. I have 40 hours of gameplay in before I even recorded the gameplay for this video. To save me from having to do another 40-hour playthrough to experience cutscenes I've already experienced for while I'm talking about them, when applicable, I will use screenshots. However, if the story description piques your fancy, I would honestly highly encourage you to pick up Potion Permit yourself. Part of why you can't easily speed through Potion Permit is there are several resources you need a lot of in the game, but 3 of them you need an absolute ton of. Those resources being gold, wood, and stone. To further put it into perspective as to just how much of these resources you need, I have gone ahead and tallied up the exact amount you need in order to buy the not necessarily mandatory but definitely recommended upgrades, and this is not counting furniture that I could buy over and over again. This is just counting like tool upgrades, house upgrades, clinic upgrades, and other important upgrades and unlocks that you will need to purchase throughout the game. In order to get everything I just listed off at its maximum level, you will need 92,250 gold, 29,070 wood, and 25,350 stone. That is the 3 main resources needed to upgrade everything, not counting other resources that you could also use in alchemy that are needed in order to, say, upgrade the carpenter shop or upgrade the blacksmith shop. It's also important to mention that unlike a lot of games that are very, very similar to Potion Permit, these resources aren't easy to come by. As I had mentioned in the intro, part of the reason why you are being brought to Moonberry is because a disaster caused by the previous chemist left the plant life decimated within the island. So as a result, there are some resources that are very hard to come by, like you can only gather a few jasmine a day as an example. During the early stages of the game, there are 2 ways to earn money. You can do part-time work throughout the village. However, there are only 3 part-time positions, the payout is relatively small, and it takes up 2 hours of your day. The 3 part-time positions are sorting out bottles of ink at the police station, packaging packages for delivery in the post office, and mashing grapes to turn into grape juice at the church. It's also important to note that you cannot simply just decide to do part-time work for the entirety of a day, because once that part-time work is done, you cannot do the same job twice in a day. If I were to sort out ink, then I cannot sort out ink until the following day. It's also important to note with the part-time work that only one of those options is open every single day of the week. That would be the police station. The post office is closed on Sundays because town hall is closed on Sundays, and the church is closed on Wednesdays. So on Sundays and Wednesdays you only have 2 jobs available, whereas on every other day of the week you have 3. The only other way, at least at the start of the game, for you to earn gold is to cure patients at your clinic. And the thing about that is the higher level your clinic is, the more profit you'll make. And also, the higher tier of disease that you have to cure, the more profit you'll make as well. As an example, even with upgrading my clinic twice, sometimes curing a basic disease, I'll still only get 100-ish gold. In terms of gathering a lot of wood, sadly, even though there's a massive forest up on a cliff top that surrounds the village, you cannot climb those cliffs and just go to town with an axe. You're restricted to a specific elevation in a sense, and there are only a handful of trees within the first area that you can explore. And the same applies to stone. Even though there's a massive mountain that you eventually gain access to, that being Glaze Iceberg, you cannot simply go up to the iceberg and start mining to gather stone and other resources. You have to break open small rocks on the ground. With all that in mind, I'm sure you're wondering, well, okay, like stone and wood and even gold are extremely limited. What's this all even used for? I can break them down into a few categories for you. You've got house upgrades, tool upgrades, and blockade clearings. The main progression of Potion Permit is clearing several blockades that prevent you from exploring the rest of the island. That also will eventually lead into you finding the necessary things that you need to fix in order to regain the town's trust. What do I mean by blockade clearing? It's simple. In Meadow Range, the first area, there is a literal landslide that you have to provide the rangers with gold, wood, stone, and even a strong fishing net in order to clear away the landslide, so that way you can gain access to the rest of Meadow Range. And then to the north of Meadow Range is Glaze Iceberg, like I mentioned, but for that you need to repair the cable car, and that's its own set of quests. And then down into the south of Meadow Range you have the Barren Wasteland, and in order to gain access to the Barren Wasteland you need to use, again, wood, stone, and gold, as well as fixing a water pipe that had broken that was preventing a geyser from destroying a bridge. Now then, I could dive super deep into the story of Potion Permit, what you find once you clear away these blockades, and what you actually have to do in order to handle the situation. However, I will give you the too long, didn't play, and don't want to spend hours talking about version of the situation. Think of it like a too long didn't read on like a Reddit post. Long ago, Moonberry Island had a highly sought after plant that could cure seemingly any illness. There was a problem though. This extraordinary plant called the Drake Aloe, and yes, that is aloe as in aloe vera. The Drake Aloe was dying off. Moonberry's community called upon the medical association at the capital to send out some chemists so they could try to save the Drake Aloe. The chemists figured out that the aloe was dying off from a highly contagious infection. However, curing the infection on a plant did nothing to prevent the infection from spreading. The chemists had followed the aloe's roots into a cave where they found that the aloe's main water supply was contaminated with a highly contagious fungus. With this revelation in mind, the chemists set out to the other regions of Moonberry Island to run a variety of different experiments to try to determine the best way to help the aloe. These experiments each failed, but still taught the chemists more about the infection. However, they did not publicly share their findings with the community. The community saw that the chemists were going to the different regions of the island, and they saw the plants dying off, they saw all these problems happening on the island. And so even though, oh yes, the chemist was actually trying to help, Moonberry Island's community thought, oh, this guy's just messing everything up. What the heck is wrong with him? As a result, they drove the chemist off of the island and put a ban on chemists because they figured, oh, well, if one chemist did this, then why should we trust any other chemist? For many years, the town believed that they were justified in their actions and thought that they could get along just fine through the use of their local witch doctor and into the lineage that the witch doctor's family has provided. However, when you, the player, learn of the situation with the Drake Aloe, the Rangers are also with you, and they report all of your findings to Meyer, and he shares the information with the community. But the thing is that the initial testing site where they were monitoring the Drake Aloe's water supply, they had even built a machine to try to clean up the water, was blocked off by a cave. The villagers thought, wait, why did they block it off? What else are they trying to hide from us? But the Rangers and even Meyer step in to point out that, well, the bridge leading to the wasteland has been out of commission for a long time, and we believe that the geyser is the reason to blame why part of Meadow Range was blocked off for so long. So considering the distance between the cave entrance and the geyser, it's not unforeseeable to consider the idea that the wasteland got the brunt of the geyser eruption, and that the Rangers believe that the chemists likely couldn't have even blocked off that cave had they even wanted to, considering everything that we know about the previous chemists. It's also important to point out that as you explore Meadow Range, Galley's Iceberg, and the Barren Wasteland, you find out that the chemists were actually very close with fixing everything. However, the community had grown too impatient. You can even find recipes that they had created for potions that could have cured the situations occurring, but they were driven out of the community before they could administer the aid. With these revelations in mind, the community on Moonberry Island agrees to help you cure the Drake Aloe and finally make things right. The blacksmith agrees to offer up her assistance in fixing up the old machinery. The fishermen on the beach agree to provide a very strong, very fine fishing net to act as a mesh to take out the fungus, and everyone else agrees to help out in their own unique way. And with all of their assistance combined, along with a final potion that you brew, you're able to cure the Drake Aloe and you're able to set the story straight about what was going on. And I hear you pondering right now, yes, that was the short version. There's a whole lot more to unpack if you were to decide to dive into the game. Alright, now with all of that out of the way, let's dive into those accessibility features, shall we? Potion Permit really only has one accessibility feature, and that is the ability to change the text size. I have it on its maximum setting, and I find the text is overall very easy to read, and just generally it makes it a lot nicer of an experience compared to the default setting. Potion Permit also does offer a core game mechanic that in its own right could be considered an accessibility feature. At the start of the game, you also have with you a dog that by default is named Noxie, but you can rename it just like you can rename yourself. As you can see previously in the footage, my default name was Logan, but I renamed myself. The main feature that the dog offers that can be an accessibility feature is as long as you have formally been introduced to a character, you can have your dog track that NPC down. For me especially, this was really helpful because when I first started playing the game, I encountered the character of Zeke, who is a homeless person who lives on the edge of town. However, Zeke's character intrigued me, and the more I got to know Zeke, the more his character intrigued me. But at the same time though, Zeke does enjoy frequent naps around town on the various benches. Sadly, you cannot wake someone up to talk to them, so it helped out to be able to find out in the evening where is Zeke, or in the morning where is Zeke, so I can go talk to him to make him my friend. This is especially helpful because Potion Permit, at least initially when I started playing it, seemingly did not have lots of guides and tutorials on various aspects of it that I could find online. For a long time, I didn't know characters' schedules and had to rely on Noxy with their ability to track down the NPCs for me. As for accessibility options that I think that the game should have, there are potions that limit the types of ingredients you can use, because in Potion Permit, each ingredient is assigned an elemental aspect. The various elements are fire, water, earth, and wind. However, certain potions will restrict use of various elements, and while when you initiate brewing of that potion, it will tell you the elements that you cannot use. For whatever reason, in the notebook and in the display for when you're choosing what potion to make, it tells you that every single element is always permitted, but it's not. Next up, let's talk about one of the more relaxing aspects of any one of these types of games, fishing. Potion Permit has its own unique take on fishing. As long as you have the right bait and the right fishing rod, you can go to a fishing spot and use it and go fishing. Then you set your casting power, reel it in slowly to try to lure fish to grab onto your hook. Then from there, you basically begin a game of tug of war. When the fish is trying to pull away, you have to let go and stop reeling in. But you can actually slow down its attempted escape by occasionally pressing the button to reel in while it's trying to swim away. But you have to be careful with that, because if you do it for too long, or if you do it too often, the line will break and you'll lose out on that fish. And the way that Potion Permit denotes this stress on your line is by making the fishing line turn red at the more stress you put on it. The problem is, especially if you are at a decent distance away with a visual impairment, sometimes I can't distinguish between the white line and the deep dark red line. The way that I would honestly change this is have an option where the popularized form of a fishing minigame from Stardew Valley, which is keep a cartoonized version of the fish in a green space by reeling in. I would honestly take that popularized version over this, because at least the interface has to be a bit larger for me to be able to see it. Alright, now I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. That's all that I wanted to talk about for accessibility features, but there is a character I want to talk about. Now, when I reviewed Stardew Valley several weeks ago, initially I had written off the idea of talking about any of the characters to just focusing on gameplay and the accessibility features that I felt necessary to talk about. There would have been a character I would have focused on talking about just because of the importance of him in relation to my channel. In Stardew Valley, that character is George. George is an elderly man in a wheelchair who is initially grumpy at the world. However, as you become better friends with George, you find out why he ended up in a wheelchair, and eventually he starts mentioning to you that he's beginning to soften up and is starting to view the world in less of a jaded way. Similar to how Zeke is similar to Linus in Stardew Valley, there is a character that is similar to George in Potion Permit. However, I feel that this character's story is done better than George's, and that person is Garret. Garret is, again, an old grumpy man who is stuck in a wheelchair. But first off, I've got to point out, Garrett's wheelchair looks a whole lot nicer than George's. Secondly, I feel that Garrett's story is better fleshed out and is more emblematic of how I would say that, in general, I would hope that people would treat people with disabilities. Not necessarily how the story plays out, but just the outcome of the story, I should say. For context, Garret ended up in a wheelchair because of the situation that unfolded with the previous chemist. The previous chemist had checked up on them and informed him that there was nothing that they could do and that he would be wheelchair bound for the rest of his life. Despite the fact that Garret will never walk again, none of Garret's friendship quests that you go on to become better friends with him, none of them are initiated by Garret himself. Both of them are initiated by Mercy. In the first one, Mercy asks you to do a checkup on Garret to see if there's anything that you can do for him. But when you tell Garret that there's nothing that you can do and that he'll be wheelchair bound for the rest of his life, he acknowledges this and accepted this, but he doesn't want you to tell Mercy the truth. He wants you to tell her that he's fine. When you tell her that he's fine, she doesn't really agree. She kind of stutters and stammers a little bit before saying, okay, I'll make sure that he gets some rest. This is also another thing where I feel that in a way Garret's story has done better than George's, because in Stardew Valley we know exactly how George ended up in the wheelchair. He explains to you that 40 years ago he was a miner, and one day he slipped while carrying a box of dynamite and it exploded on impact. He woke up in the hospital being told that he would never walk again. With Garret, while we know some of the details about the impact that the previous chemist's experiments had on the environment, we never find out what happened to Garret specifically within that time that led to the wheelchair binding. In a way, that actually sparks more intrigue because you are left there wondering, considering everything that you know about the events of the story, what happened to Garret? What happened within the chemist's experiments that led to a man being wheelchair bound? Because there are even others that are mentioned in the story that died due to the experiments, but none of that is ever really further expanded upon. That's also another thing, is unlike Mercy, George's wife, Evelyn, has accepted her husband's state of being and is just happy to have him be with her still. Mercy seems to want her old husband back from before the cataclysm and is trying to force him to go along with it. In Garret's second friendship quest, Mercy again invites you to their farmhouse, where she tells you that a family friend has sent her a quote-unquote potion recipe that they said could cure Garret. However, after you make the potion and give it to Mercy to give to Garret, when she asks him how he is, he says, "Oh, what, this? I mean, it tastes like chicken soup. It's just chicken soup, Mercy." And she begins stammering, confused, sad. She tries to pull you back into trying out more recipes until Garret stops her and says, "That's enough. I just want to move on with my family. What happened in the past is in the past. I just want to move forward with the family and the life that I've got." And she accuses him of giving up. Again, he just tells her, "No, I haven't given up. If I had given up, I wouldn't be here anymore." And when he asks her if she's willing to let the past be the past and to move forward with him, she stammers and says that she'll try. However, in my opinion, this isn't truly the conclusion to their story. See, Garret and Mercy have two children, an older son named Lucky and a young daughter named Laura. When you reach maximum friendship with Laura, she asks you if you can help her repair a vase, because the vase got broken when her parents got into a fight. So you take the vase over to the local carpenter. Even though his shop is labeled as the carpenter shop, he's more just the overall furniture and arts and crafts kind of guy. So once you repair the vase, the carpenter makes a remark once the vase is done, because he initially assumes that the vase belongs to you, that maybe you should become a better artist. However, when you tell him that it's for Laura, he apologizes and hands you the vase. When you bring it to Laura, you two go into the farmhouse and you interrupt one of Garret and Mercy's arguments. When Laura interrupts the argument, she asks her parents if she can show them something. Initially, Garret is like, "Maybe later, honey, I'm having a discussion with your mother." But Mercy is like, no, what do you want to show us? And then Laura places the vase on the dinner table, and the family begins to reminisce about the vase, because it turns out that Laura was the one that drew on it, and what she drew on it was a picture that was taken of the family when Laura attempted to imitate Garret when she was a baby. And after her parents are done reminiscing, Laura does like one of the best metaphors I've ever heard a fictional child use. She compares herself to the vase. When her parents are fighting, she feels broken, she feels sad, but when her parents are happy and working together, she feels whole and excited, and she turns to her parents and asks them if they will agree to stop fighting. Her parents, realizing that their arguments have had a true impact on their family, agreed that yeah, it is time to stop fighting. It's time to let the past be the past, truly and for real this time. That's how I think that people with disabilities should be treated in a way. And the metaphor that I would use for it is, imagine your house burned down a decade ago. Over the course of a decade, you're bound to build back up a life. A decade later, most people have moved on well and truly their lives have been built back up to a comfortable position again. Because I mean, that's 10 years of your life. Could you imagine for a moment if someone walked up to you after finding out that your house burned down a decade ago and they approached you with the same amount of pity and feeling sorry for you as someone would have had they found out that your house burned down a few hours ago, a few weeks ago, a few months ago? All that person is doing is shoving the pain back into your mind. That's how it feels when, like, not all the time, but that's how it feels sometimes when, like, you're encouraged to make use of all these people's assistance when you have a disability. It's like, I've got a system in place for my life, and my life is good. My life is comfortable. I cannot change the fact that I was born with an underdeveloped nerve. That is long in the past. That's 27 years in the past. Let me move on with a life where, yes, I have a disability, but I've got a good life where I'm able to move forward. I'm able to make these videos, you know? Moving on from that heart-wrencher, the only notable thing about Lucky in terms of Garret's family is that, well, at least in relation to the discussion about Garret and his disability, is the fact that Lucky designed Garret's wheelchair. Apart from that, Lucky's friendship quests really don't touch on his parents' relationship. Alright, well, I hope you... Wait, what? I was just getting to the outro of the video. Alright, let's see who it is today. Oh, it's Mercy. I hope you guys enjoyed. Back to potion brewing I go, I guess. If you guys made it this far, say sticky jelly in the comments. The more people that interact with my videos, the more people that will see them. See you guys next week when we review Subnautica, a survival, crafting, and building game where you are the sole survivor on an aquatic planet after your spaceship crashed. This next video will be my first ever viewer requested video.